Have you ever stopped to wonder about the colorful clothes you're wearing right now? They carry a story that stretches back thousands of years. From the earliest cave paintings to the most luxurious fabrics of the ancient world, our ancestors discovered incredible ways to extract colors from nature. Think about it, those vibrant reds, deep blues, and rich purples that adorned kings and queens throughout history didn't come from a modern chemical plant. They came from roots, insects, minerals, and shells found in the natural world around them. Imagine an ancient Egyptian craftsman carefully crushing lapis lazuli stones to create that perfect shade of blue for a pharaoh's tomb. Or picture a Phoenician dyer collecting thousands of tiny sea snails just to produce enough purple dye for a single royal garment. The quest for color-shaped trade routes built fortunes and even sparked wars. The crimson robes of Roman senators, the golden yellows of Buddhist monks' garments, the indigo blue of the first denim, all these iconic colors began as secrets whispered from one generation of artisans to the next. But how did they manage to create such vibrant, lasting colors using only what nature provided? How did they discover which plants, minerals, or even insects could yield the perfect shade? And what ingenious techniques did they develop to make these colors stay bright through years of wear and exposure? Before we dive into this fascinating journey through prehistory, like this video and subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel for more incredible stories about the ingenuity of our ancestors. The human quest for color is as old as humanity itself. Our earliest ancestors weren't satisfied with the muted tones of their natural world. They yearned to capture and create the vibrant hues they saw in sunsets, flowers, and exotic birds. This search for color begins in the dim light of ancient caves, where our ancestors ground red ochre and charcoal to tell their stories on stone walls. Some of these paintings in France and Spain date back more than 30,000 years, yet their colors remain vivid enough to move us today. As civilizations grew more complex, so did their relationship with color. What began as simple decoration evolved into powerful symbols of status, religion, and identity. The history of natural dyes is woven into the very fabric of human civilization. Take the Phoenicians, those legendary seafarers of the Mediterranean. Around 1,000 years before Christ, they discovered that a tiny sea snail called murex could produce a magnificent purple dye. But the process was painstaking. It took nearly 10,000 snails to produce just 1 gram of dye. This purple became so precious that only emperors and kings could afford it. In ancient Rome, wearing the wrong shade of purple could be punishable by death if you weren't of noble birth. On the other side of the world, the mighty Aztec Empire collected tribute in the form of cochineal, tiny insects that produced the most brilliant red dye ever seen. When Spanish conquistadors first saw Aztec treasures gleaming with this red, they were astounded. They soon began shipping this red gold back to Europe, where it became more valuable than actual silver. The ancient Chinese guarded the secrets of their yellow dyes, derived from the Sephora flower, so carefully that they were considered state secrets. In medieval Europe, entire towns built their economies around woad, a plant that produced blue dye, creating blue dynasties that passed down their techniques through generations. These weren't just colorants, they were currencies, treasures, and closely guarded national secrets. Wars were fought over access to dyestuffs. Trade routes spanning thousands of miles were established just to transport indigo from India, saffron from Persia, or Brazil wood from South America. Color wasn't just decoration, it was power. And for thousands of years, those who controlled the most vibrant, most color-fast natural dyes could quite literally paint themselves as the rulers of their worlds. Let's journey back 2,000 years to the lush Yucatan Peninsula, where a Maya artisan named Carb is working in the morning light outside his workshop. His hands are stained blue from years of craftsmanship. And today he's teaching his son the family secret that has made their family revered throughout Maya society. "Watch carefully," Cobb might have said to his young apprentice. "First, we harvest the indigo leaves when they're perfectly ripe. Too early, and the color will be weak. Too late, and it turns muddy. Imagine Cobb crushing these leaves, fermenting them in ceramic vats, and then, this is where the magic happens, mixing the indigo extract not with water, as other cultures did, but with a special white clay called palygorskite. As he stirs the mixture, something remarkable occurs. The blue becomes more vibrant, more alive. What Cobb couldn't have known was that he was creating a molecular miracle. This special clay, found only in certain regions of the Yucatan, formed a perfect bond with the indigo molecules, creating what we now call Maya blue, a pigment so resilient that even modern acid baths cannot dissolve it. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they were astonished by the brilliant blue murals that adorned Maya temples. These blues had already survived for more than 1,000 years without fading, even in the harsh tropical climate. The Spaniards tried to discover the secret, but the Maya artisans protected their knowledge, passing it only from master to apprentice, parent to child. The ancient knowledge was nearly lost. During centuries of colonial rule, many Maya traditions disappeared, including the exact formula for Maya blue. It wasn't until the 1960s that scientists began to understand how this remarkable pigment was created. Today, modern researchers stand amazed at what Cobb and generations of Maya color makers accomplished with simple materials and profound understanding of their natural world. The Maya blue they created has survived hurricanes, intense sunlight, and even modern chemical solvents, remaining as vibrant today as when it was first applied to temple walls. This extraordinary achievement isn't just a chemical formula. It's a testament to human ingenuity and the careful observation of nature across generations. While modern synthetic dyes might fade within decades, Maya blue has endured for millennia, carrying the artistic vision of ancient artisans into our present day. The ancient world was a vast laboratory where our ancestors experimented with everything around them to create colors. Their technological advances weren't built with modern equipment, but through centuries of careful observation and experimentation passed down through generations. Let's start with what they found beneath their feet. The earth itself provided the first and most reliable pigments. Red and yellow ochres, essentially colored clays rich in iron, were used from the earliest cave paintings more than 30,000 years ago. In ancient Egypt, artisans ground hematite, a form of iron oxide, to create rich reds for tomb paintings meant to last for eternity. And indeed, they have. The vibrant green of malachite, a copper mineral, adorned the eyes of painted figures in burial chambers, symbolizing rebirth and fertility. But the true ingenuity emerged when our ancestors turned to the living world around them. Every region developed its own palette based on local plants. Indigo, extracted from various species across the world, created blues that transformed global fashion. In the Americas, the fiery red-orange of annatto seeds colored everything from textiles to ritual body paint and even food. And saffron, worth more than its weight in gold, required the hand-harvesting of thousands of delicate stigmas from crocus flowers to produce even small amounts of its distinctive golden yellow. Perhaps most surprising were the colors derived from animals. The famous royal purple from the ancient city of Tyre came from sea snails that had to be harvested alive, their tiny glands carefully extracted and exposed to sunlight in a precise process. Even more remarkable was cochineal red, made from tiny insects that feed on prickly pear cacti in Mexico. Indigenous peoples would carefully brush these insects from cacti, dry them, and grind them into a powder that produced the most brilliant red the world had ever seen. A color so valuable that Spanish galleons transported it back to Europe under armed guard, The technologies for preparing these pigments were equally sophisticated. Simple mashing or grinding wasn't enough. Each color required its own complex recipe. Plant materials were often macerated, soaked for days or weeks to extract their color compounds. Many, like indigo, required precise fermentation processes. The plants were soaked in water until they began to decompose, releasing the color molecules that could then be used for dyeing. But perhaps the most fascinating technological breakthrough was in fixing these colors so they wouldn't wash away or fade. Ancient dyers discovered that certain substances could act as mordants, from the Latin word to bite, helping the color bite into the fiber and stay there. Wood ash provided alkaline solutions. Urine, yes, human urine, was collected in community pots because it contained ammonia compounds that enhanced certain dyes. Tannic acid from tree bark created blacks and browns while simultaneously fixing other colors. These weren't just crude methods, they were sophisticated chemical processes discovered thousands of years before the science of chemistry even existed. If you're fascinated by these ancestral discoveries, leave us a comment below. Which natural color would you most like to learn how to make yourself? Creating colors in the ancient world wasn't just an artistic pursuit, it was a dangerous, mysterious, and often deadly endeavor. The brilliant hues that adorned temples, textiles, and royal garments came at an enormous cost of human ingenuity and sacrifice. Imagine being the first person to discover that certain plants produced vibrant colors, but only after they rotted and fermented to the point of producing an unbearable stench. This was the reality for indigo dyers across the ancient world. In medieval European towns, indigo workshops were banished to the outskirts because the smell was so overpowering that it could make an entire neighborhood uninhabitable. But the stench was just the beginning of their challenges. Once they extracted these colors, how could they make them last? A beautiful purple that turned brown after one rainfall, or a brilliant red that washed away with the first perspiration, was worthless. The quest for color-fast dyes drove some of the most sophisticated chemical experimentation of the ancient world. Through centuries of dangerous trial and error, dyers discovered that certain substances could fix colors to fabrics. In ancient India, dyers learned that adding iron-rich mud to their indigo vats produced blues that would never fade. Moroccan leather tanners discovered that when they walked barefoot through pigeon droppings in their workshops, the colors in their leather mysteriously became more vibrant and permanent. They had accidentally discovered that the ammonia compounds in the droppings acted as mordants, binding color to material. The quest for color permanence led to some rather unpleasant innovations. Across Europe and Asia, community urine collection pots became common sights as master dyers discovered that aged human urine contained chemicals that helped set certain dyes. Young boys were paid to collect urine from taverns and public spaces. In ancient Rome, Emperor Vespasian even placed a tax on urine collected from public toilets when he learned how valuable it was to the textile industry. Then there was the challenge of safety. The line between a brilliant pigment and a deadly poison was perilously thin. The most vibrant greens and yellows often contained arsenic, slowly poisoning the very artists who created them. Cinnabar, the brilliant red used in Chinese lacquerware, slowly drove its handlers mad from mercury poisoning. Lead white, used for centuries to create luminous skin tones in portraits, claimed countless lives among painters who habitually licked their brushes to create fine points. The knowledge of which materials were safe to handle and which would kill you came at a terrible cost. Guild records from medieval Europe tell of apprentice dyers with permanently stained skin, chronically damaged lungs, and shortened lives, all sacrifices to the quest for color. Perhaps most remarkable was that these ancient artisans persisted despite these challenges. Without understanding the molecular chemistry behind their work, they developed testing systems and quality controls. Egyptian tomb paintings include scenes of dyers testing fabrics for color fastness by exposing them to sunlight or washing them repeatedly. Chinese silk dyers developed elaborate systems to ensure their colors would last for generations, sometimes burying test samples in the ground for months to see if they would degrade. These weren't just craftspeople, they were the world's first experimental scientists, developing complex theories about how materials interacted, testing their hypotheses through careful observation, and passing their knowledge to the next generation, who would refine it further still. In our age of synthetic everything, where colors come from chemical factories rather than gardens or mineral deposits, we're beginning to realize something our ancestors knew all along. Working with nature offers rewards that go far beyond the visual. Today, as we face unprecedented environmental challenges, these ancient color makers are becoming unexpected guides for a more sustainable future. The very practices that were abandoned during the Industrial Revolution are now being rediscovered by a new generation of artists, designers, and environmentally conscious consumers. Consider this. Every year, the modern textile industry releases over 200,000 tons of synthetic dyes into our waterways. These chemicals, derived from petroleum, persist in the environment for decades, disrupting ecosystems and potentially harming human health. In contrast, the indigo vat of a traditional Japanese dyer releases nothing more harmful than composted plant matter that actually enriches the soil. In rural India, villages that maintained their traditional natural dyeing practices through generations have found themselves suddenly at the forefront of sustainable fashion. Designers from New York, Paris, and Milan now travel to these communities to learn techniques that have been passed down for thousands of years. What was once considered outdated is now recognized as revolutionary. The wisdom of these ancient practices lies not just in their environmental benefits, but in their connection to place and community. Natural dyers worked with what was locally available, creating regional color identities that told stories about the landscape. The blues of coastal Japan differ subtly from the blues of inland Mexico, not because of artistic choice, but because different plants, waters, and techniques created distinct local palettes. Modern artisans rediscovering these techniques often speak of unexpected benefits. A textile artist in California who switched from synthetic to natural dyes described how the process transformed her relationship with time. Chemical dyes give you instant results, she explained, but natural dyes teach you patience. You can't rush indigo, you can't hurry madder root. They unfold in their own time, and learning to work with that rhythm has changed how I approach everything in my life. Perhaps most surprising is how these ancient techniques are influencing cutting-edge science. Researchers studying the extraordinary durability of Maya blue are now developing new pigments for everything from house paint to solar panels. The natural mordants used by medieval dyers are inspiring new methods for fixing pigments without harsh chemicals. Even the medical field is looking backward to move forward. The antimicrobial properties of certain natural dyes, which ancient cultures used intuitively to preserve textiles, are now being studied for potential applications in hospital settings where antibiotic-resistant bacteria pose growing threats. The revival of natural dyes isn't just nostalgia, it's a recognition that our ancestors developed sophisticated, sustainable technologies through careful observation and respect for natural cycles. They understood what we're relearning now, that true innovation often means working with nature rather than attempting to dominate it. As we face the environmental challenges of our time, these ancient color makers offer us not just techniques, but a different way of seeing our relationship with the natural world, one where human creativity flows from nature's abundance rather than depleting it. Did you know that the purple worn by Roman emperors was so incredibly valuable that a single toga dyed with this color would cost the equivalent of an entire year's salary for the average Roman worker? This legendary Tyrian purple, extracted from the mucus gland of the murex sea snail, required an astounding number of mollusks to produce even a small amount of dye. Imagine the scene! Thousands of snails harvested from the Mediterranean, each one carefully cracked open by hand to extract a tiny gland that produced just a drop of this precious substance. The resulting color wasn't just a fashion statement, it was quite literally the color of power. Roman laws actually restricted who could wear this purple, making it a crime punishable by death for ordinary citizens to dress in the imperial shade. The next time you see a royal purple garment in a museum, remember that you're looking at what was once the most expensive color in the ancient world. Here's another colorful secret. That beautiful indigo blue that colors your favorite denim jeans has a rather surprising history. The traditional process for creating indigo dye required fermentation in human urine. Yes, you heard that correctly. Ancient dye masters would collect community urine in large vats, where the indigo plants would ferment. The ammonia in aged urine helped convert the indigo into a soluble form that could penetrate fibers. During this fermentation process, the dye vat would emit an overwhelmingly foul odor that made indigo districts in ancient cities immediately recognizable by their smell. In Japan, traditional indigo masters still use similar fermentation methods, though most have found more socially acceptable alternatives to human waste. However, some of the most traditional Japanese indigo artists maintain that nothing produces quite the same depth of color as the original method. That favorite pair of blue jeans you're wearing right now owes its color to a history that's, well, a bit more aromatic than you might have imagined. And speaking of surprising sources, did you know that the vibrant red color found in many of your favorite foods, from strawberry yogurt to cherry soda, might actually come from tiny insects? Cochineal red, derived from small-scale insects that feed on prickly pear cacti, has been used as a food coloring for centuries and is still widely used today. Look for carmine or cochineal extract on your food labels. That's crushed insects providing that beautiful red color. These tiny bugs, native to Mexico and South America, were so valuable after the Spanish conquest that they were shipped back to Europe as carefully as gold and silver. By the 18th century, cochineal had become Mexico's second most valuable export after precious metals. Today, it takes about 70,000 dried insects to produce just 1 pound of this brilliant red dye. While synthetic alternatives exist, cochineal remains popular because it's a natural food coloring that produces an intense, stable red that doesn't fade easily. So the next time you enjoy a pink macaron or a ruby red fruit drink, you might be experiencing the same color technology that the Aztecs developed centuries ago. The next time you glance at your colorful clothes hanging in the closet or admire a vibrant painting in a museum, take a moment to remember that each of those colors carries within it a story thousands of years in the making. A story of human ingenuity, curiosity, and our enduring desire to capture the beauty we see around us. Think about the hands that first discovered these colors. The ancient Egyptian artist who ground malachite stones to paint the eyes of a pharaoh. The Maya artisan who created a blue that would outlast empires. The medieval European dyer stirring a bubbling indigo vat as dawn broke over a sleeping town. Each color represents countless generations of knowledge passed down through families and guilds, protected as precious intellectual heritage. These natural colors connect us to the earth in ways our modern synthetic alternatives never can. The ochre in ancient cave paintings came from the very soil where our ancestors stood. The royal purple that adorned emperors was born from the same seas where their ships sailed. The brilliant reds that colored sacred textiles came from plants that grew in temple gardens. Our journey through the world of natural colors reveals something profound about human creativity. Our ability to transform the simplest elements of our world into objects of lasting beauty. With nothing more than plants, minerals, insects, and patient experimentation, our ancestors created a visual language that continues to speak to us across millennia. In this age of instant gratification and mass production, there's something deeply reassuring about these ancient techniques. They remind us that true innovation doesn't always mean moving faster or creating more. Sometimes it means paying closer attention to the world around us, working in harmony with natural cycles, and having the patience to let something beautiful emerge in its own time. Whether you're a professional artist, a casual crafter, or simply someone who appreciates the colors in your world, I hope this journey has given you a new lens through which to see the vibrant hues that surround you every day. Each color has earned its place in our visual vocabulary through thousands of years of human discovery, trial and error, and the persistent belief that beauty matters. Did you enjoy this colorful journey through time? Don't forget to leave a like, share this video with friends who love art and history, and subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel for more fascinating content about the ancestral techniques that shaped our world. And tell us in the comments, which natural color or dyeing technique fascinated you the most? We'd love to explore your favorites in future videos.